Corey, not long after the NBA lifted its moratorium on trades, the Milwaukee Bucks were really bold, right? Like they go out and get Drew Holiday. Now they sent Eric Bledsoe, George Hill, and 3 first-round picks plus 2 pick swaps to New Orleans for all of that. It's a big move. Is it worth it? Do you like this move for Milwaukee?
Look, it's a lot. It's a lot. And when I was looking at it, I was like, oh my goodness, that's a lot. That's a lot. But you're trying to re-sign Giannis to this Supermax extension. He's playing sublime basketball right now.
Right.
And they've been able to get into the top of the Eastern Conference or the top of the NBA year after year with the assets that they've had, which most people around the NBA would say, okay, do you really think like the piece that they've had were all-star championship quality pieces? I would say that they've been underrated a lot of the times by a lot of NBA fans. So from my perspective, they're trying to give Giannis the firepower that he needs to win a championship. But at the end of the day, I'm sitting here and I'm like, Kurt, if you give me James Harden or Russell Westbrook or Steph and Clay or LeBron or AD or Giannis or Chris Middleton or Giannis or Drew Holiday, I don't know if I would take that. I mean, what do you think?
Look, for me, it's a really simple calculus, actually. If Giannis signs the Supermax extension, this was totally worth every pick. And if he doesn't sign the Supermax extension, you just screwed yourself over pretty good, to be honest with you, because now you don't have picks for the rebuild that has to come. That's really, it's that simple. If he signs this thing, and I'll tell you, talking to people around the league, there are a lot of people around the league that said there's no way I make that trade unless I have a verbal agreement with him that he's going to sign that deal. So there's almost this expectation now that he's going to, because they wouldn't have traded away that many picks otherwise, right? Like, then again, maybe not. Maybe he likes the leverage. Maybe this was just a little bit of gameplay and they're being bold. So we'll see. On the court, Drew Holiday defends. Drew Holiday can play on or off the ball. He can knock down threes. He is fantastic in the locker room. He is like a pro's pro. On the court, this makes them a little bit better if they can fill. Like, they have a killer starting 5 right now. Absolutely killer. They just got to put some depth around it.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, like I said, I think from Giannis's perspective, it's a lot of pieces, but the Bucks want to try to avoid what happened to Kevin Durant, right? You had 8 years in OKC. You were competitive. You got pretty far in the playoffs, but you never won. And then Kevin Durant was like, what am I doing? I got to go to Golden State, join the super team, and he won Finals MVP and a championship. So from Giannis's perspective, the playbook is already out there, The Bucks are doing everything in their power to prevent that, or even Anthony Davis is another playbook example. So I think the Bucks are trying their best.
And if he's not happy, look, you sign that Supermax. I expect him to sign that Supermax because, $228 million or more, depending on where the cap lands. That's a lot of money. You sign it, and if you're not happy in 3 years, you just force your way out and force a trade, which kind of brings us to the other big story going on right now in the NBA. James Harden trying to push his way out of Houston and force a trade specifically to the Brooklyn Nets. First off, if you're Brooklyn, do you want to do this?
And that's a good question. I feel like from my perspective, the number one thing that comes down in the NBA is talent, right? And if you have Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and James Harden, you have a pretty good shot of going all the way. So Steve Nash and his coaching staff, they're going to, who knows what they're going to do. But I think the only question that I have is, is there enough possessions to go around? I saw a crazy stat, Kurt, that said that James Harden himself had more possessions last year, isolation possessions, than any other team in the league. Second place was Portland with Damian Lillard. And then on that same team, right, with the Houston Rockets, Russell Westbrook was second in isolations per game. So you have the 2 top players in isolations per game playing together. They had scoring titles, but no ring. And now you have Kevin Durant, who's one of the best one-on-one players in the game. If he goes with James Harden, who's one of the best one-on-one players in the game, I just don't know if it's going to, make any difference.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of isolation, but also a lot of scoring, right? I tend to follow the Mike D'Antoni theory on this, which is really great players, elite players, figure out how to play together. And, Kevin Durant sacrificed a little when he went to Golden State and gave up some touches because you're playing with Steph Curry, you're playing with Klay Thompson. You got to give up some touches to win. I think he gets that. I think James Harden might be at a point in his career where he's willing to not take on that ridiculous offensive load every game. Maybe Kyrie will sacrifice a little. There are questions there, right? Like what players you're going to have to put around them and defense, because look, Kevin Durant's your best defender of those three, and he's coming off a torn Achilles. So you're going to have to find some rim protection and other stuff out there. But I think, look, you can solve all those problems. This team becomes a contender. That's just the question is what you're sending back too. It's like, how big a package is this? Because if I'm Houston and I have leverage, like he wants to go to Brooklyn, all right, we'll send you to Brooklyn. Hey, Brooklyn, here's what we're demanding. Karis LeVert, and we want Jarrett Allen, and we want Spencer Dinwiddie, and we want like a ridiculous number of picks and pick swaps going forward. We want it all. We want them all if you're going to do this. And I don't know if Brooklyn's going to go there.
Yeah, I'll say you're talking about the defensive capabilities that Brooklyn brings to the table. Jarrett Allen is a great rim protector. He's a big presence for them. Yeah, but you think about what you're giving up, and that's a big question. But James Harden in the bubble showed his commitment to defense. I mean, he got a lot better at defense this year, which was great. He's made some huge defensive plays. But yeah, the question is, what pieces do you put around those three superstars?
Yeah, actually, James Harden's a little bit better. He's not the best help defender ever. And look, you can't expect him to exert a ton of effort on that end for a long period of time in Houston, considering what you were asking of him offensively. But that said, really quick hands and so strong, especially in the lower body. They dare you to post him up. And Brooklyn would be the same way. You want to post him up? Go ahead. You think you can move him off the block? Good luck with that. He's just strong. He's not going to, unless you're Joel Embiid, you are not moving him. So look, if I'm Brooklyn, I definitely want to do that play. But if I'm Houston, I don't mind dragging this out a little to see if somebody else, maybe Philadelphia comes in with a better pick. Maybe there's someone else. I want as much as I can get, and I'll wait it out if I can.
Yeah, and that's a question that Houston will have to figure out. But as we get into our NBA draft period preview, number 3, Charlotte Hornets, I feel like their decision is pretty straightforward.
Yeah, yes.
They're number 3. You're looking at that space in the draft. You're looking just for talent. Who's the best player available? They don't really get this opportunity very often. The last time it came around for them was 1999 and 2012. So I think that they go for LaMelo Ball to bring that franchise player in. I think it's kind of a no-brainer. What do you think, Kurt?
Yeah, I think if LaMelo falls, look, they're going to take either James Wiseman, Anthony Edwards, or LaMelo Ball, whichever one of those three falls to them. I think they're, like you said, it's relatively much a no-brainer. This is considered the top tier of the draft. And yeah, you occasionally hear people trying to slide other people up in there, but that's the top 3. So you take the guy who falls to you. They're reportedly really high on Wiseman as a center. We'll see. This is you take the guy that comes to you. LaMelo, if they don't get him, by the way, they're rumored for to be one of the teams possibly looking at Russell Westbrook. Michael Jordan likes him. They would need a playmaker if they don't get LaMelo. But if they get LaMelo, he'd be a great fit there.
Do you think Russell would go to Charlotte? It's not exactly a free agent destination.
I don't think he has a choice. Like honestly, there's just no market for Russell Westbrook right now. It's the Knicks have poked around, but they don't want to offer that much. Charlotte's not offering that much. Washington would do a deal, but they want to trade John Wall. Just you take our bad contract and the guy we're not happy with, and we'll take yours, and we'll see if this works. But there's just not this driving market for him right now. If he really wants out, Charlotte, and he doesn't have control, so they could send him to Charlotte. So it's possible. But I think more than that, Charlotte really just wants to build smarter and through the draft, and this is their opportunity. They're going to get a really good player here to go with. Look, they've got some decent point guards and Dante Graham, who was fantastic last year and stuff. And they'll go from there. Yeah,
and the thing that's really important to Charlotte to understand is you're picking somebody who you think is going to be a starter for 7 to 9 years, a decade, someone you could build a team around. And I think one thing that is kind of overlooked from time to time is that when you pick a franchise player of that caliber, the team takes on that player's personality, right? So when you're looking at this long-term kind of play, if you're going to invest a franchise in someone like a James Wiseman or LaMelo Ball, that has to come up for consideration. And Ball looked like he matured out in Australia. He's been playing pro for a couple years now, and being that young in a professional environment has to be good as far as kind of developing the maturity level, dropping out of high school and doing what he did. So I think that kind of allayed some concerns there.
That's the question about him, right? Does he love the game enough to put in the work to fix his flaws? Because he's got them. Like that, we talk about his shot. You talk to shot people about his shot, and it's like, watch him. His feet aren't in the same place every time. He has not put in attention to detail on some of this stuff that teams will, any team, like they've got shot doctors who will grind him on this stuff and make it fit. Is he going to put in the work? Does he have the love of the game to do that? That's really your only question with Ball. Because if he does have the love of the game, boy, 6'7", passing, handles, he's good.
Very talented. Next up is number 2, Golden State. So this is Kurt, this is a really interesting scenario because it reminds me of the Spurs, right? When they got Tim Duncan. You had my dad, David Robinson, #1 overall draft pick, injured. So then for some reason you get the #1 draft pick again and you get a steal in Tim Duncan. And, the rest was history. But Golden State, they have all their returning stars healthy. And then now you get a #2 draft pick. Do you trade this pick? Do you pick the best available talent? What would you do if you were Golden State?
I would try to trade it. I really would try to move down because I think there's players that can help them in this draft and help them more quickly. Isaac Okoro and Obi Toppin and guys we've talked about in the past who are more ready to play right now necessarily than the guys at the top. That said, there's just not much of a market for this pick right now because nobody's in. Look, all these players at the top are flawed. And as one scout put it to me recently, if you took LaMelo Ball and threw him, or James Wiseman and threw them into next year's draft, they probably go 6 or 7. Like it's next year's stacked, this year isn't. So people aren't dying to move up, and that might force Golden State to make the pick. And I think they pick Wiseman, by the way. That has long been the guy rumor that they've kind of liked. And look, rim running big who can produce, look, he's got some development to do, but rim running big who can protect the paint would fit in nicely with with Steph and Clay and everybody there.
Yeah, absolutely. And from my perspective too, when you look at a guy that's young, only played 3 games in college, which is mind blowing if you really think about it. And in those games, they just mostly use him around the rim to clean up or throw alley-oops. I saw this recent interview on NBA's Instagram where he was talking about he was practicing Tim Hardaway's crossover. He wants to go play against Anthony Davis and Giannis. So if you use him, and I saw one clip of him actually in open space bringing the ball up, he looks pretty good. So I'd be very curious to see him as a developmental project where he can grow, has a great upside, amazing talent, was really underutilized in college to a certain extent, and then he can grow into that player that he needs to be in 4 or 5 years in a safe place in Golden State with Coach Kerr, who's is going to give you. I mean, he's a Hall of Fame coach. You get to learn around Steph Curry. I can't imagine a better scenario. And hopefully, then you get the next guard of the Warriors being him and Andrew Wiggins.
We'll see about Andrew Wiggins coming around. That has been the concern for some teams about Wiggins. I mean, about James Wiseman, by the way, is that he wants to be the guy who faces up. He wants that Anthony Davis kind of game out on the wing, and he might not be quite good enough to do it. He might be more of ultimately a DeAndre Jordan type of player, and you're going to have to convince him. That's one of the reasons I think Golden State is good for him. He can work on that part of that game, and maybe he can develop that part of his game. But the first time he tries it and takes the ball out of Steph Curry's hands, I would like to be there and see what Draymond Green says to him. It'll scare him straight, man.
There's going to be a nice meme on that. The #1 pick goes to Minnesota. So Minnesota is an interesting scenario. You have Karl Anthony Towns, D'Angelo Russell. They're really good friends. They finally got to play together. Now this is their team moving forward. Jarrett Culver, high draft pick for them. What do they do with this pick, Kurt? Do you go for Anthony Edwards, or the only person we haven't talked about yet? What do you think?
The consensus around the league right now is they're going to go with Anthony Edwards, and the idea is this: fit, right? Like if you don't love any of those top 3 guys, and they don't seem to have fallen in love with LaMelo Ball or whoever, then you take the guy who's the best fit. And if you've got D'Angelo Russell at the point and you've got Karl Anthony Towns in the middle, then you need wing scoring. Anthony Edwards can put up, he's going to put up points in the NBA. The question is the other end of the floor and his defensive acumen, but he was putting up 19 points a game in the SEC as a 19-year-old. Like he's going to come to the NBA body. He's going to get buckets. That's the best fit for them. The sense is that they're going to go that direction. Look, I was on the LaMelo Ball call with reporters on Tuesday where he really made his case for fitting next to, I would fit great next to D'Angelo Russell. It was like the most animated. He really wanted the #1 pick. But I'm just not sure that that's where Minnesota ultimately goes because I think they're concerned about fit.
And Anthony Edwards, as far as defensively, 6'10" wingspan at 6'5", right? So he's got, I can't even imagine. I was trying to think through that. I was like, how long are this guy's arms? They reach down to his knee or below that? But anyway, 6'10" wingspan. He's very physical, 225. I actually watched him play. He's active in the passing lanes. He can finish through contact on the other end. So, and he wants to play defense, and defense is a big mindset thing. So when you look at the Minnesota, you're going to put up points. Yeah, you have a lot a rim protector in Karl Anthony Towns, but it's nice to have a very athletic, physical guard to complement both sides of the floor.
He has the tools. He has the tools to be a very, very good NBA player. It's just, again, he's going to have to put in the work. And defense becomes, it's about want and desire. It also becomes about some reps and just putting in the work in games in the NBA, because things move fast and your recognition has to climb, it has to be so quick these days, where you've got to recognize the switch coming and however you're handling that. It might take him a little bit to get there, but the Warriors would have some time. Again, the Warriors have developed players in the past. They've got a good development program, and they can hold his minutes to a reasonable number while they play that Steph Curry, Draymond Green, Klay Thompson, by the way, we're contenders game. And by the end of the season, you've got a guy you can bring in off the bench or wherever you're going to use him, and he'll play a role for you.
Yeah, so who knows whether he goes Minnesota #1 or #2 to Warriors. We're just as curious as all of you guys are back home. So we'll find out tonight at the NBA draft. Tune in.